The innovation proposal, and I'm clarifying this, your innovation proposal is the first part of developing your overall innovation plan. And in a proposal, you're developing a maybe 1.5 page letter document that essentially creates an argument that you're going to share with your audience in your organization, whether that's your principal, a curriculum committee, or a group of colleagues that you want to convince that your proposal, your idea for your makerspace, your e-portfolio, your blended learning environment, your one-to-one initiative, whatever the case may be, you want to propose an argument for your idea and provide enough information to justify why this is a good idea, that you're planning to implement it as a pilot, and that it's going to change your learners' lives. So the proposal is the first part of your entire innovation plan that you present at the end of the 5th week. And it becomes this key starting point of what you're planning to do. So it's really important that you really get clear on this. And so what you submit to me initially after the first weekend can be a rough draft of your letter, or it can be the key points. But what I want to see, and what's really important for you, and the reason I want to see this, is that you clearly define what you're planning to do in a couple of sentences, really clear. I'm planning on creating student engagement by having my class find their voice through e-portfolios. And then you talk about how the advantages of the e-portfolio and so on and so forth. So you're going to identify and define something. You're not going to be talking about, well, I'm going to deploy educational technology in a variety of different ways and different modalities, and you don't even mention the notion that really what you're doing is a blended learning environment. So you want to name it so that your audience has an idea what it is you're planning to do. But you also want to create a need, identify the need, establish the need that's there, create the start of an argument for what your plan is. This is important that you understand that this is a 1 to 1.5 page proposal, a letter. Ideally, it's a letter. I'm going to show you some examples, but ideally, it's a letter to your colleagues. Okay, Michael Fullan, one of the most renowned or highly acclaimed educational theorists today, makes the argument that if you can't state your argument in 1 to 1.5 pages, then you really don't know what you're arguing for. An entire report should really only be 2 to 3 or 4 pages at most. Again, if you can't summarize what you're doing in a report in 3 pages, then he argues you don't know what you're doing. So when we look at this proposal, 1 to 1.5 pages, you want to clarify what it is that you're going to be doing. It's also really important for you to take a look at the final assignment in the course, okay? And this assignment is a compilation where you take your innovation proposal, you add it to your literature review, you also include a link to your innovation outline, right? Your innovation plan outline. You have on the start of that final page a video that you're using to pitch your idea, that 2-minute digital story. And that final post really creates the context for those ideas. You don't dump all your documents onto one page. No, you write a blog post that creates a context. So it's really important that you understand your final plan is part of that 5th week assignment. So take a look at what's going to be happening. Remember, the change of focus video that I've had you take a look at. You're shifting from skills and curriculum and activities and looking at the bigger project. What's the bigger project? Is it an e-portfolio? Is it blended learning? Is it a makerspace? Is it what is it? What it is you're planning to do? That's the shift of focus. That's the authentic learning opportunity that you're going to use to move your organization. Keep that in mind. Now, since you're new with me, I want to introduce you to some resources on my website. If you go to my website and you click on the DLL program map page, you're going to find this particular page that has an overview of the program, and it also has links to a lot of examples. This is where you're going to find examples for students' work. Okay, right here, 5305 assignment examples, and here it is. So you're going to see examples of previous students' work, and most of these people, if not all these people, did earn that cherished A. But the reason that they're here is not because they had the A. It's because they structured a wonderful argument. They presented their ideas. They took ownership of it. They made it their own. perhaps one of the most important things you can do in this assignment is make this real. If you're faking it till you make it, you're going to run into difficulty. That's my biggest caution. So the biggest tip for you, make this real. Across the board, all these assignments or all these innovation proposals these people put forward are real, authentic activities or projects that they're implementing in their schools or their organization. So this is the key thing. I want to point out a few examples and identify why I think they're important, and how you can learn from those examples. What are the key things? The first example is probably one of my favorite proposal letters. And the reason it's one of my favorite proposal letters is that it follows a really wise format. It identifies a need, right? Students create all of these documents and things, and they either get dumped in a basement box or they don't get looked at all. So instead of doing these paper-related portfolios, this is an opportunity for an e-portfolio. So create the need, identify a solution to this problem of this basement box, and when you take a look at her site, you'll see that that's what it's called, ditching the basement box, and then identifying what she's planning to do, and then talking about some of the advantages within what she's identifying to do, and then looking forward to moving the ideas forward, asking for engagement, and again, reinforcing the fact that preparing students for the future. Simple, short, concise letter. Wonderful. Wonderful. Gets to the point. Remember, this innovation proposal is part of your whole innovation plan, so it's one piece. Okay, another letter. Mike, wonderful letter, much more articulate, a little bit longer, goes into the argument in much greater detail, points to some of the research, right? Again, because he's making a very specific argument about computational thinking. And so he really has to pitch this idea, but he's targeting at his particular audience. Similarly, Brooke had targeted at her audience. So this particular audience, he knows who he's writing this to, and he needs to convince her and make his case, and he does so in a wonderful way, provides the references. So again, identifies what he's planning to do, proposes how it's going to help the learner. Emphasis is building that engagement, how it's going to help a learner. Okay, another one, this wonderful letter, going to the superintendent of schools. So again, this is somebody who is a step removed from most teachers. So the argument that has to be made has to be bigger and broader and point to big problems that are being faced. Physical education is an issue. So he's proposing to do an online physical education program that is going to help the health of students. So he's got to make a big pitch, a big argument, right? And so he's identifying how advantages of online learning, blended learning can really has helped other aspects of schooling. Why not do this with health? With physical education. Makes an interesting argument, talks about physical activities, provides a structure, talking about what he's planning to do, how it's going to potentially run, and then looks at a really short snippet of maybe what's going to happen in the next year or two, signs it, right? And provides some references. Again, making a very, very specific argument. We're talking a page and a half here, but this is really, really a sound pitch. This is a proposal. This is really quite good. I want to expose you to a slightly different presentation format. Kaylee is using a Google slide deck, which essentially the content within it is could be in the form of a proposal or an essay, argumentative essay. But within the slide deck, this is the pitch that she used. This is a slide deck she used when she was working with her colleagues. But she also set it up in such a way that you could read this slide deck quite easily online, right? So not overwhelming. Now, this isn't the best presentation deck, but this is used in such a way that a person can follow along and quite quickly see what's happening, what's going to be the impact, and so on and so forth. So, this is an alternative. I caution people on doing a presentation in this format. This happened to work within the context of how she set up the entire page. Now, one of the things you're going to notice is that quite often I'm linking you to that final innovation plan page, and this is part of that page. So also take a look at some of these examples where this fits, right? The final example I want to expose you to is slightly different, and this is because this particular student knew his audience. His project was up and running, project-based learning. They were engaged in a variety of different things, but they were looking at ways of engaging teachers into building the environment where project-based learning would take over and really work effectively. So how do you create that significant learning environment? How do you give learners choice? How do you give them voice? How do you let them take ownership of the projects? How do you make the projects real? So with his proposal, this is much more of an argumentative essay talking about the conditions that they're currently at within the project that they're working on, and how by adding this notion of giving students choice, ownership, and voice, and making these projects real and authentic, that it was going to change things. So this is a nice argumentative essay that fits into the context of his project, because this is something that had to be made because the project was up and running, and this is a shift in the project. In ensuring that he could work with new teachers coming into the project and get them up and running and thinking the right way about project-based learning, and setting up that blended learning environment where that project-based learning could work very, very effectively. So this is slightly different, but still wonderfully effective. The key thing with all these assignments is that these students made this real. They identified who their audience was. They identified clearly what they're planning to do, and they proposed it. This is a proposal. So this first assignment is a proposal. One last reminder, and again, in the words of Michael Fullen, if you can't state your argument in a page to page and a half proposal, you might not fully understand what you're planning to do. Take some time to really think through what you want to do. What is it called? What does it look like? What are the advantages? What is the need? You want to address these things in a summary type fashion to create the need for what you're planning to do and to fill the need with your proposed idea. Hopefully this helps. I'm going to be adding a few more videos like this as you go through the course, and these videos are intended to help guide you through the thinking process and developing your innovation proposal, your innovation plan on the road to changing your world through the work you're doing in your learning environment.